I wasn't supposed to be home that early. The meeting in Denver had been circled on my calendar for weeks, but an unexpected cancellation opened up my afternoon. I could have stayed in the city, led time, had a beer with a coworker, maybe holed up in a hotel with emails and leftover takeout. But instead, I got in the car and pointed it toward the mountains, toward home. Marcy had been distant lately. Not cold exactly, just unavailable. She said she was tired. Work was draining her. We needed space, she mentioned once, like it was some kind of relationship vitamin. I thought maybe this little surprise would help. That seeing me early, grinning at the door with her favorite Thai takeout, might spark something. I even stopped for fresh tulips at the florist on the way. It was nearly dusk when I pulled into the driveway. Our house, our mountain hideaway, sat tucked under a canopy of pine and aspen, the sun pouring gold over the roof like it had something to celebrate. I remember thinking how peaceful it looked. How wrong that would turn out to be. The moment I stepped inside, something felt off. The air had a strange kind of stillness, not quiet but held, like a breath waiting to be exhaled. And there, hanging on the hook in the front hall, was a denim jacket. Slim fit. Frayed collar. Not mine. Not Marcy's. Not anyone I recognized. I stood there for a long second, the tulip sweating in my grip, before stepping fully inside and closing the door. The house was warm. Too warm. Not like the usual chilly touch it held this time of year. A fire had recently been out. I could smell the faint afterscent of burned wood. I walked down the hallway, trying not to read into anything, trying not to feel like my heart was creeping into my throat. Maybe she had company. Maybe it was nothing. But then I saw them. 2 wine glasses. One perched on the living room coffee table, half full. The other sat on the bedroom dresser. That one had a smudge of lipstick, Marcy's, I assumed, but the second? That one was still warm to the touch. Like someone had just set it down minutes before I walked in. On my pillow was a leather bracelet. Black, braided, worn at the edges. Definitely not mine. I didn't touch it. Just stared. I've always believed in gut instinct. It's helped me in business, in friendships, even when deciding whether to trust someone I just met. And in that moment, my gut was screaming, pounding against my ribs like a prisoner desperate to be heard. Still, I didn't move. The sounds outside were soft, wind brushing through branches, the faint groan of trees in the early evening chill. But inside? Inside, everything screamed silence. Marcy returned 10 minutes later. Maybe less. I heard the crunch of her boots on the porch first, then the slide of her key in the lock. The door opened with its familiar creak and she stepped in, carrying a paper bag and humming something tuneless. Her eyes met mine immediately. She stopped mid-step. "Jason," she said, startled but smooth. What are you doing here?" I didn't answer right away. Just stared. She glanced at the wine glasses, then the tulips I had laid on the kitchen counter. A small smile tugged at the corner of her mouth, something unreadable behind it. "Meeting got canceled," I said finally. "Thought I'd come home early. Surprise you." She nodded slowly, stepping further inside. "Well, surprise." She walked over to the counter, placing the bag down. Thai food, ironically. From the same place I'd just driven past. Her eyes flicked back to the hallway. "Sorry for the mess," she added casually. Tina came over. We had wine. She brought her brother, Matt. He helped with her car. I think he left his jacket. I raised an eyebrow. "And bracelet?" Marcy glanced toward the bedroom. "Oh, probably his too. He takes off stuff and forgets it everywhere." Honestly, it was quick. In and out. You just missed them. It was the way she said it. Like she was reciting lines. Like she knew which questions were coming and already had the answers polished. I nodded, more out of reflex than agreement. "Got it." She moved around the kitchen, pulling plates from the cabinet. "We should eat before it gets cold." "I'm not hungry," I said, leaning against the doorframe. She paused. Looked at me. "Jason, what is this?" "What's what?" "This tone. That look on your face." She tilted her head. "Are you actually suspicious of me? Because I had wine with Tina and her brother while you were gone. You tell me." She sighed. Not in frustration, but like she was already done with the conversation before it started. "This again," she muttered, more to herself than to me. "You know, Jason, if you keep looking for reasons not to trust me, eventually you'll find them. Even if they're not there." That one hit like a dart. "I didn't say anything," I replied. "No," she said, setting the plates down with a bit more force. "But you're standing there like I've done something wrong. And that's not fair." I looked at her, really looked. She wasn't angry. She wasn't scared. She was annoyed. Defensive. Like I was the one making things uncomfortable. Like I was the problem here. She turned away and started unpacking food. "I'm not going to keep explaining myself every time you come home early. I'm allowed to have friends. I'm allowed to drink wine. If that's suddenly suspicious, then maybe the problem isn't me. It was an impressive redirect. She didn't deny anything. Didn't offer proof. Just flooded the room with enough emotion to make me question my own sanity. I didn't respond. We didn't speak much for the rest of the evening. She ate. I sat on the porch with a beer, watching the last sliver of daylight disappear behind the ridge. That night, in bed, I kept my back to her. I stared at the moonlight bleeding through the blinds and listened to her steady breathing. She fell asleep quickly. Or at least pretended to. And me? I stayed awake. The bracelet still sat on my nightstand. I hadn't moved it. Neither had she. It was a small thing. One object. One clue. But it wasn't the bracelet that haunted me. It was the way she made me feel like I was the crazy one for noticing it. The night after the bracelet incident, I couldn't sleep. Marcy had turned away from me in bed, her breathing steady, maybe a little too steady. I stared at the ceiling, my mind looping back through the months leading up to that moment like a reel stuck on replay. It's strange how clarity often comes in hindsight. A week ago, I would have laughed off a bracelet and a jacket as nothing. But now? Now those details screamed. My brain refused to rest, dragging up memories I'd buried or brushed off as minor. Like the museum tickets. It was about a month back. I remember finding them in her purse when I was looking for gum. 2 tickets dated for a weekday afternoon when she said she had back-to-back Zoom meetings. I asked her about them casually that night. She blinked, paused, then said she bought them for a client and forgot to hand them off. At the time, I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She was calm. Natural. She even laughed at herself for being forgetful. But now, that laugh played differently in my head like a line delivered in a play. Perfectly timed. Practiced. And then there were the photos. Marcy has always been big on social media. It wasn't unusual for her to post group sh*ts, funny selfies, or sunset walks with captions like, recharging with my girls, or solo unwind after a long week. But there was a growing mismatch between what she told me and what showed up online. She claimed to have been with Hannah one weekend, her old college roommate. Said they stayed in and watched bad rom-coms. But the next day, she posted a story from a downtown rooftop, 2 glasses in frame, candlelight, and a silhouette that didn't quite match Hannah's shape. When I asked her later how the movie night went, she paused and blinked as if realigning her story. Oh right, we ended up going out for drinks. Just the 2 of us. At the time, I shrugged. But now that pause plays on a loop in my memory. Then there was the phone situation. About 6 weeks ago, she changed her lock screen password. It used to be my birthday. We'd made a little joke of it once, said it was so I'd always be able to get in if she ever dropped dead. Charming in that dark humor kind of way. But one day I reached for her phone, she'd asked me to check the time, and the screen was locked. Oh, I updated it, she said, eyes not even flicking from her computer. Too many scam calls lately. I accepted it. But after that, her phone was never more than a foot away. Face down on every surface. Set to silent. She even brought it into the bathroom, which she never used to do. The calls, 2 certain ones where her voice lifted into that airy, flirtatious tone she usually reserved for teasing me. I'd ask who it was and she'd wave it off, just work stuff, or, oh, that was Jen. You know how she gets. Once, when I asked why she'd gone outside to take the call, she said she didn't want to disturb me during my meeting. But I hadn't been in one. At the time, I let it slide. Looking back now, I see the pattern. She wasn't being careless. She was being calculated. The distance she kept wasn't just emotional, it was logistical. She was curating my reality. She wasn't lying blatantly. She was offering partial truths wrapped in charm and routine. Even the conference trip made more sense now. She flew to Phoenix 3 months ago for what she said was a product launch. A quick 2-day out and back. Usually when she traveled, she FaceTimed the kids, sent me photos from the hotel gym, maybe a selfie in the Uber with a snarky caption about airport snacks. This time? Nothing. Just one text the first night, so wiped. Crash mode. Love you. When she got back, she was glowing. Not tired like usual. No complaints about red ice or rude Uber drivers. Just, light? I remember thinking how nice it was to see her happy. Now, that glow looks like a souvenir from somewhere else. Even her talk of growing apart started resurfacing in my memory with a different tint. She'd been saying things like, we're in different seasons of life and I don't know if we still fit since early spring. I took it as burnout. Marriage fatigue. We'd been together 9 years, through relocations, miscarriages, family drama, career pivots. I figured it was just a slump. I didn't see it as a setup for exit. But now? Those lines felt preloaded. Not spontaneous, not emotional. Rehearsed. I sat up in bed that night and looked at her back, at the soft fall of her hair across the pillow. And I felt something break in me, not a dramatic shatter, but a quiet snap. Like when you tug a loose thread and realize the whole sleeve is unraveling. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was realization. I got up and went downstairs. Sat at the kitchen table in the dark with a blanket over my shoulders and stared at nothing. The fridge hummed. The house creaked with age. My own heartbeat was a metronome of dread. I didn't have evidence. Not yet. But the bracelet had opened the floodgates, and now every little thing I had once dismissed as harmless or strange took on new weight. A late return from the store. The new perfume she said was a sample. That time she said she didn't want to be one of those wives who loses herself in being someone's partner. She had been leaving breadcrumbs in plain sight. I just never thought I'd be the one trying to piece them together. I thought about confronting her. Sitting her down and laying it all out. Demanding explanations. But some part of me knew how that would go. She'd turn it around again. Make me question my own sanity. Twist the logic until I couldn't tell if I was overreacting or just seeing shadows. So I didn't say anything. Not yet. Instead, I made a list. Just a small one. In my notes app under a fake grocery title. Museum tickets, forgot to hand off to client. Changed phone password, no reason given. Phoenix conference, almost no contact. Wine glasses and bracelet. Social post not matching story. Face down phone always. Growing apart, started spring. Emotional tone shift since April. Each bullet made me feel both closer to the truth and further from the life I thought I had. I saved the note. Turned off my phone. Sat in the dark. The next morning, she kissed me goodbye like nothing had happened. Coffee in hand, bag on her shoulder, hair in a neat twist. I said, "Have a good day," and she smiled. "You too." But in my gut, something else had started growing. Not just suspicion. Resolve. By the third week, suspicion wasn't a whisper anymore, it was a drumbeat. I'd stopped asking Marcy casual questions. It didn't matter if I caught her in inconsistencies, she always had an answer. A practiced shrug, a gentle deflection, some version of "you're imagining things." So I said nothing. I just watched. There's a certain quiet power in pretending not to know. She thought the silence meant I'd moved on. I let her believe that. I still kissed her goodbye in the mornings. Still asked how her day was, still rubbed her shoulders when she sighed at her laptop. But every interaction felt like a lie dressed in routine. I was buying time. I was calculating. That's when Boulder came up. She mentioned it offhandedly one Sunday morning as we were folding laundry. "I might need to be in Boulder for a project next month," she said. "Just for a day or two, some early meetings. I'll probably stay overnight to make the drive easier." She said it like it was nothing. Like she hadn't just handed me a sliver of opportunity. I nodded. "Sounds good. Let me know if you need anything packed." She smiled. "I've got it covered." And so I waited. The day she left, I booked a separate hotel in Boulder under a different name. She had sent me her itinerary a week earlier, Hilton downtown, one night, check-in at 4 p.m. I booked my room 3 blocks away. She thought I was in Denver for a client dinner. I left early, drove up ahead of schedule, and parked outside her hotel in a rental car. I wore a hat pulled low and sunglasses even though it was cloudy. I felt ridiculous. Like some character in a bad spy movie. But the knot in my stomach made everything feel deadly serious. Around 5:20 p.m. I saw her. She came out of the hotel wearing a soft beige sweater and jeans, hair pulled into a loose ponytail, phone in hand. She looked calm. Not rushed. Not like someone heading to a meeting. She walked 2 blocks and turned into a side street. I followed at a distance. There, waiting near a curbside cafe, was a man. Mid-30s, athletic build, a gray coat, short beard. The kind of man you wouldn't remember if you passed him on the street, but I remembered him. We'd met years ago. At a fundraiser Marcy dragged me to. His name was Kyle or Kevin, I couldn't quite place it, but I remembered the way he had made her laugh. Too loudly. Too often. He smiled when he saw her. Not a polite greeting. The kind of smile that knew things. Private things. She walked straight into his arms. They didn't kiss, but the hug was long. An asterisk mate. His hand rested just above her waist, hers around his neck. When they pulled back, she touched his face briefly, like they'd done this before. Like this was normal. I didn't move. They grabbed coffee, sat at the patio table, laughed. She leaned in close. He rested his hand on hers. They talked for nearly an hour. Then, together, they walked back to her hotel. I circled around and parked in the alley behind the building. There was a small terrace 2 floors up, mostly obscured by ivy and rusted railing. From the angle I had, I could see into part of the room. That's when I saw them again on the small balcony visible through the sliding glass door. She was in sleepwear. Not pajamas. A fitted shirt. He was shirtless. She sat on his lap. It was surreal. Like watching someone else's life unfold. Marcy touched his neck. He whispered something in her ear. She laughed, not politely, but the kind of laugh that spills out when you're lost in someone. I didn't take a photo. Didn't record. I didn't need to. I turned away, got back into the car, and sat motionless for a while. I couldn't cry. Couldn't scream. I just felt nothing. Numb. Hollowed out. I didn't drive straight home. I stopped outside town at a gas station and just stood there for a while, watching people come and go. It was strange, the world kept spinning. People kept living their lives like nothing had changed. Like mine hadn't just broken in half. I got home late. The house was empty, quiet, almost too quiet. I took off my shoes, turned off the lights, and sat on the floor of the living room. There was no plan yet. No next move. Just silence. When Marcy returned the next day, everything resumed as normal. She walked in, kissed my cheek, dropped her bag by the stairs. Trip went well, she said. Tiring, but productive. I smiled. Glad to hear it. She talked about team goals and market analysis and how the drive had been a bit long. I nodded. Asked her what she wanted for dinner. That night, she fell asleep on the couch while we watched some show about a married couple falling apart. The irony wasn't lost on me. I covered her with a blanket and sat beside her, staring at the screen long after the credits rolled. In my mind, I kept replaying the moment on the terrace. Her laughter. His hands on her hips. The way she looked so completely at ease, like she hadn't just detonated our life together and walked away from the wreckage. I wanted to feel angry. But mostly, I just felt done. Done with doubt. Done with hope. Done pretending I didn't already know. That night, I opened a new folder on my laptop. Titled it, Contingency. Inside, I wrote a single sentence to begin. She doesn't love you anymore. But she wants you to keep pretending she does. I hit save. And for the first time in weeks, I knew what had to come next. I didn't confront her. It wasn't because I was afraid or unsure or holding on to some last shred of hope. It was strategy. Marcy had made her move. Now it was my turn. The night after I got back from Boulder, I lay awake in bed while she slept beside me. Her breathing was soft, steady, like she had no idea the floorboards were already cracking beneath her. I stared at the ceiling and thought, not about what I felt, but about what I needed to do. It started the next morning. I stopped using our joint computer. I set up a second profile on my work laptop and began transferring files, documents, financial records, old emails. Everything with a date, a timestamp, and her signature. All the little things that had once seemed irrelevant but now felt like puzzle pieces. The bank account came next. We shared 3, 1 checking, 2 savings. I opened a separate one in my name and quietly shifted a percentage of my paycheck to it. Nothing suspicious. Just a small reroute. Enough to be missed only after it was too late. I checked the lease on our house. We didn't own it, just renewed for another year a few months ago. But I found a clause I'd forgotten about. Either party could cancel early with 60 days notice and a small fee. I emailed the landlord using a private account, told him we'd be relocating this fall. No specific reason. Just a family matter. He responded kindly and confirmed the cancellation. The legal prep followed. I reached out to a lawyer, someone a buddy recommended after his own quiet divorce. We met in a small office near downtown, a cozy space with cheap coffee and a clock that ticked too loud. I don't want a battle, I told him. But I want to be prepared. He nodded. The key is documentation. Everything that proves misconduct, mismanagement, and emotional manipulation. I slid a folder across the table. Inside were **TS, Marcy's location history, emails confirming hotel bookings, social media timestamps, and a single typed page summarizing the Boulder night in calm, bullet-pointed detail. No drama. No accusation. Just facts. He reviewed it in silence. This is strong, he said eventually. And if you want full custody, this gives us a foundation. I nodded even though the words made my stomach twist. Full custody. It sounded harsh, like I was trying to punish her. But I wasn't. I was protecting what mattered. Our kids didn't know anything yet, and I wanted to keep it that way until everything was secured. At home, I played the role perfectly. I kissed her goodnight. I made coffee in the mornings. I folded her laundry, commented on her new earrings, and laughed at her work stories. I listened when she complained about her boss. I gave her space when she needed it. I didn't ask questions. She thought things were improving. That was the worst part, seeing her smile at me like we were building something again when all I could see was the blueprint of my escape. I installed a backup app on our doorbell camera. Started saving clips remotely. She never noticed. I renamed the files with mundane titles: grocery run, dog walker, delivery 3 p.m. But they weren't deliveries. They were visits. Sometimes hers, sometimes his. I kept a running log. Day, time, duration, behavior, evidence. It became routine. A cold ritual. Like checking the weather. But it gave me control. And when everything else was slipping through my hands, control felt like oxygen. I stopped sleeping much. I'd lie awake while she scrolled on her phone beside me, the screen lighting up her face in the dark. I used to love that glow. Now it made me want to get up and scream. But I didn't. I stayed still. I waited. Every lie she told, every casually delivered story about staying late at work or grabbing a last-minute dinner with coworkers or running errands that took 3 hours, I added to the folder. The weirdest part? She started being nicer. Like she was overcompensating. More affectionate. More helpful. She even suggested a weekend trip, just the two of us. Said she missed how we used to be. I agreed, of course. Smiled. Said we should plan something. And all the while, I was archiving messages. Photos. Receipts. Confirming that while she was planning a getaway, she was still scheduling hotel meetups under her work calendar. She wasn't just cheating. She was comfortable. That's what got me. Not the betrayal itself, but how easily she lived inside it. How easily she looked me in the eye and said she loved me. How quickly she adapted to the dual lives. One with me, one without. So I started planning my exit the same way she had planned her affair, quietly, efficiently, thoroughly. I transferred our kids' school records to a backup drive. Contacted my old college roommate about temporary housing. Reached out to my sister about spending a few weeks with her if needed. I didn't commit to anything. Just set things in motion. Every piece I moved into place made me feel a little more distant from her. And I needed that. Because the more I saw of her life behind the curtain, the harder it became to remember who I married. The woman I fell in love with wouldn't have done this. Not just the cheating, but the gaslighting. The ease of her deceit. The way she made me feel guilty for noticing what was right in front of me. I wasn't just leaving her. I was leaving the illusion of her. 3 weeks into the prep, I received a notice. The house lease cancellation had been approved. We had 45 days left. I marked it on the calendar in the garage. In red. A private countdown. Marcy didn't notice. She started talking about repainting the living room. Said we should switch out the couch. Asked what I thought about taking a trip to Oregon over the holidays. I nodded. Gave noncommittal answers. She was dreaming forward. But my clock was ticking backward. Every smile she gave me, every soft touch or gentle word felt like a test. And I passed them all. I didn't flinch. Didn't question. Didn't give anything away. Because when it came time to leave, I didn't want there to be a single warning. No fight. No explanation. Just gone. I began writing a letter. Not a bitter one. Not angry. Just final. I wanted her to read it when the silence hit. When the house was empty. When her key no longer worked and her login bounced back and her phone calls found nothing but static. The letter changed daily. Some nights it was short. Other times, pages. But the message never wavered. You knew. And you chose anyway. By the 4th week, I had everything I needed. Backups. Accounts. Legal prep. Physical proof. Emotional closure. I wasn't scared. I wasn't sad. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was ready. Not just to leave, but to vanish. Marcy's birthday fell on a Tuesday. She had no idea it would also be the day everything else disappeared. The night before, we ordered Thai. Her choice. We sat on the couch watching a show she loved and I pretended to care about. She rested her feet on my lap, and when I rubbed them, she gave me the soft little smile like we were still the couple we used to be. It took everything in me not to flinch. She didn't know that I'd already packed everything. She didn't know that while she slept, I deleted my profiles from our joint accounts, logged out of every shared streaming service, and disabled the smart home access connected to her phone. She didn't know that my suitcase sat in the back of my car under a tarp next to 3 plastic bins filled with essentials, documents, and keepsakes I couldn't leave behind. She didn't know that I'd made peace with the end. That morning, I woke up before her. I brewed coffee, set the table like usual, kissed her forehead. She murmured something about needing to pick up cupcakes for the office. She was groggy, still wrapped in the warm illusion that we were okay. I watched her walk down the hallway in her robe, yawning, hair messy and beautiful in that unbothered way she had. A part of me felt like a traitor. The other part, the part that had seen her on a hotel balcony with another man, felt nothing but resolve. I waited until she left. She waved from the car, called out, "See you tonight," and drove off like it was any other day. Like her husband wasn't planning to disappear forever. The moment her car disappeared around the bend, I moved. I stripped the sheets from our bed and folded them neatly. Cleared my toothbrush from the bathroom. Wiped down every countertop like it mattered, like leaving a clean kitchen would somehow soften the blow. In the fridge, I placed a single envelope wedged between the milk and the leftover pad thai. I didn't tape it to the door. I didn't leave it on the counter. I wanted her to find it when she was doing something ordinary. When she thought maybe I was just out for groceries or picking up her birthday flowers. Inside the envelope were 4 things. First, a notarized copy of the divorce papers. Irreversible. Filed with court stamps and deadlines. My signature already there. Hers required but not requested. Second, a USB drive containing images from Boulder. Hotel timestamps. Lobby footage. Doorbell clips. Screen recordings of her calendar events overlapping with his name. Nothing explicit, but everything damning. Third, a spreadsheet. Color-coded. Every withdrawal from our joint savings she'd made over the last 6 months. Every trip cross-checked with charges from spas, restaurants, hotels. Every unaccounted dollar. And last, a single page. A letter. Marcy. I knew. Not just once. Every time. You thought you were careful, and maybe you were. But what gave you away wasn't the bracelet or the jacket or even the lies. It was how you looked at me after. The way you didn't look. I stopped recognizing the way you said my name. It didn't sound like love anymore. It sounded like guilt rehearsed. This isn't a cry for you to explain yourself. It's not a setup for closure. It's a full stop. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. Not just from the house. From the bank accounts. From your world. Don't try to find me. This wasn't sudden. It was methodical. The same way your betrayal was. And no, this isn't about revenge. This is about peace. Mine. I don't hate you. But I can't pity you either. You made your choices. So I made mine. Jay. I stood in the kitchen one last time, looking around. The photos were gone from the hallway. The souvenirs from our road trips packed. The playlist we used to cook to was deleted from the speakers. The home felt like a stage set after the actors had taken their final bow. Lights on, but no life. I walked out the front door without looking back. Didn't lock it. Didn't take the keys. I got into my car and started the engine. No music. No farewell note tucked into the mirror. Just quiet. I turned my phone off before I hit the freeway. By the time Marcy got home that night, the sun was dipping behind the ridge. I imagined her pulling into the driveway expecting balloons or dinner plans. Maybe a card. She'd probably laugh and say I was being dramatic if I wasn't home yet. Maybe she'd call. Maybe she'd text. But there'd be no answer. Just voicemail. Just silence. Eventually she'd notice. The photos missing. The closet half empty. The ring gone from the tray. She'd check the fridge. She'd find the envelope. And then the silence wouldn't be ordinary anymore. It would be the kind that screams. By the time she reached for her phone to call her mom or the bank or a friend, she'd find that none of them knew where I went. Not one. Because I told no one. I left no trace. Even the email I used for the lease cancellation had already been deleted. I disappeared in the same way she disappeared from our marriage, quietly, deliberately, without asking permission. The rest of that week passed like a dream. I drove north, stayed in a rental cabin with spotty service, watched the trees change colors. I didn't answer messages. Didn't check her socials. I let the world go on without me for a bit. Let myself forget the life I used to wake up in. And when I returned to civilization, I did it with a new address, a new bank, and a new name listed on the lease. I wasn't running. I was resetting. Marcy's calls, if they came, never reached me. Her emails bounced. Her apologies, if she had any, were read by no one. She'd have to live in the aftermath she never thought would come. People like her count on others to stay. But I didn't stay. I left everything that tethered me to her, everything she had set fire to in slow motion. I walked into a life that didn't have her name on anything. And in doing so, I gave myself the one gift she never could. Peace. I didn't hear about Marcy's unraveling directly. It came in pieces, secondhand comments, muted calls from numbers I didn't recognize, whispers that never reached me fully. But I knew enough. The company she'd once been the rising star of began to shift. Her name got pulled from a major project, something about internal conflict, ethics review, personal matters. No one said it was because of the affair, but the timing was too perfect. Quiet scandals have a way of bleeding into reputations even without headlines. The man she risked everything for? He vanished when it mattered. I wasn't surprised. They always do. She tried to recover, I think. Moved back in with her parents. Reached out to friends. But from what I heard, most people kept their distance. It's hard to show up for someone when they've spent months pretending they weren't doing anything wrong. Harder still when they only reach out after everything falls apart. I got one last message. A single email to an account I rarely use anymore. No subject line. No greeting. Just, I never thought you'd really leave. It auto-deleted before I could reply. Not that I would've. That was the end of it. No grand apology. No confrontation. Just silence. A year passed. I rebuilt slowly. Not just in career or routine, but in who I was without her shadow. I started a small consulting firm. Something quiet, purposeful. Gave me structure. Gave me space. Then one night, at a veterans fundraising gala in the city, one Marcy used to attend every year, I was invited to speak. I almost declined. But something told me to go. The lights were warm. The room full of familiar faces and strangers alike. I donated under my new company's name. Small speech. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to say thank you to close a loop. Afterward, I stood with my team, 2 coworkers, a friend from college, and her daughter holding my hand. The air buzzed with music, polite laughter, and quiet ambition. Then I saw her. Marcy. In the corner. Behind a pillar. Watching. She looked different. Not broken. But smaller somehow. Like someone who had once been part of the story but no longer belonged in the room. She didn't come over. Didn't speak. She just stood there, eyes locked on me, until someone passed in front of her and she was gone. Near the drinks table, I noticed a small brass plaque. It read, "In honor of loyalty, easily lost, never reclaimed." I hadn't written it, but I could have. And when I looked back one last time, I realized something I hadn't felt until that moment. I didn't hate her. I just didn't care anymore. That's when I knew this wasn't just about leaving her. It was about leaving her world. And I had. Completely.